Hey guys, are you an old school tech geek? I'm a Gen Xer, so of course I love like old technology. And what we have here right now is a Livingston Enterprises Inc. Portmaster 2E30 communication server. So they come in configurations of 10, 20, and 30 serial connections. And so what does this guy do, or what did it do? It's old now, probably a little rusty and from being stored in a humid environment, even though it wasn't stored outside, it was stored inside. It is our sort of 100 subscriber celebration, so we're throwing some content out there from things that may not even be normal for us. Like Natalie's first oral history. It's a short one, but hopefully that's one of many. And we had the jukebox wall box. That's kind of awesome, a very nostalgic experience, for everybody, especially if you were like a baby boomer or a Gen Xer. But Gen Xers love, what Gen Xers really loved was like technology, always seeing technology grow and get better over time. So what did a communication server actually do? So it did a myriad of things. I'm going to talk about like three or four of them. First, if you had a T1 connection or something in the olden days, and that was considered a fast connection back then, but not now, obviously, that's pretty slow. But if you think that most modems and dial-up systems were like 56K, 38.4, 14.4, 28.8, 2400 baud, very slow connections, and that was fast for the back in the day. So first, you could run an actual ISP system with this. This has its own database. I think it has its own security. I don't know if it's like a radius server. I can't remember. So you could hook your T1 connection to the Ethernet port here, connect modems to the back ports, the back serial ports, up to 30 for one box, and then people can dial up to your box here, and you can provide internet service to them and make money selling that internet service. $10, $20, $30, whatever dollars per month. Option two, if you ran a bulletin board system, back in the 90s or whatever, and most MS-DOS based bulletin board systems did not have a telnet in software where you're telnetting into your bulletin board. You can have this as your telnet in machine, and those serial ports can go, instead of going to a modem, go from like a null 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 modem cable to your COM ports or multi COM port systems and into your bulletin board. So it's just that you could telnet from the internet, and it's just like they dialed into your system through a modem. And I'm sure that would work with Windows and probably a myriad of other operating system bulletin board systems that did not have any way for telnetting into the system. Now, in the case of MS-DOS, which isn't a multitasking system, with the exception of Major BBS and World Group, which got telnet connectivity programs eventually, you would either have to have one computer per node, and each node is basically a connection. So a dial-up user would normally, dial up to your bulletin board system or whatever, and it could be a library, a freenet, something else, a MUD, multi-user dungeon, which is kind of like a text-based multiplayer role-playing game. But anyway, they can dial into it singly unless they had something like Quarterdec's Desk View, which was a multitasking software for MS-DOS. And you could have multiple nodes or lines with MS-DOS, or you could do a combination of one computer per node, or one computer could have 4 or 5 nodes with Desk View. Computer 2 can have nodes 5 through 10, or yada yada. Major BBS and World Group had their own sort of multitasking environment because it was based on a database system, that software. So I think it wasn't true multitasking, but it worked just like it was a multitasking system with up to like 256 connections. And before the the like internet suites came out with them, you could use a box like this to get incoming telenet. Eventually they would both get that telenet connectivity program, and it would work in both directions through a normal like Ethernet connection. So yeah, you could allow your non-internet connected bulletin board or whatever connect to the internet with this box. Or you could do it in reverse. This right here could have the modems on it. You dial into this and you telenet from that dialed up connection into another system. There are probably other uses than the three that I just provided, that I talked about. Now what this would not do would be to allow someone to telenet out of a bulletin board system to the internet, and there are third-party softwares, applications for probably most of the bulletin board systems out there. And then like PC Board had a Clark Internet Developmental System or whatever that had like FTP, Ping, was it Gopher, Telnet, R login, and maybe a couple other things, possibly some email stuff, but many bulletin board systems had a way to route messages from FidoNet and email and stuff to their system. So this is a look at the back of the system, and this guy's in rough condition. All of these ports are rusted. So as I said, it comes in 10, 20, or 30 serial port connections. I believe it comes from 4 megabytes RAM to 16, depending, I guess, on how much processing it did. And it used an operating system called ComOS. You had your normal Ethernet port there, some other type of Ethernet port here. Here's your BNC network connection. And yeah, you could hook, null modem cables, or, your individual modems for 30 modem connections there. Does anyone even use dial-up internet anymore? Maybe there's some little pocket in the country that still has dial-up and no access to broadband. So what I actually bought this for wasn't to run a bulletin board or anything like that. I actually bought it many, many years ago, and I think I got it at a pretty decent deal. I got it so that I could telnet out of like MS-DOS and Commodore 64 communication software, like Q modem and a variety of other Comet or whatever of programs, directly from an MS-DOS computer, directly from a Commodore 64. You could probably use it with a TI-99/4A, maybe a Tandy Coco, anything that has sort of a COM or serial port, or a module like where you can put an RS-232 port on it or whatever. But nowadays, even something like this is obsolete for that, because you can get a box, just a little box that has that single connection. It'll have like an Ethernet connection on one side maybe, and a serial port on the other, and you can hook that with a null modem connection or cable, or maybe a serial cable directly to your computer or your RS-232 port, and then you can just do ADTD, and then instead of putting the phone number, where you're dialing out, you just put the IP address, and then it dials out like it's dialing a number, but that translates it into that IP address instead, and then it telnets out into that address, so you can play bulletin. There still are bulletin boards and stuff. Synchronet there are a lot of Synchronet bulletin boards out there because it's been updated for years and years and years with all the Windows 32, 60-bit, 64-bit software, and there still are world group boards out there for Major Mud, Sort of Chaos, and stuff like that. So just a little bit of old school tech geekness. Does anybody here ever run an ISP or had a bulletin board and they use this system here? Maybe that's that's kind of like what we're going for here. Time to geek out.
Now that's some cool vintage tech geek stuff. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel.